afternoon. Before I get on to the topic I'm passionate about, Debbie has just asked if I can ask any of you that might be going to your local hospital, cancer centre, whatever you call it, and who might be willing to take some of these booklets with you to be in that centre. If you could register with Debbie at 4 o'clock, because obviously these are quite expensive to produce, and we don't want to duplicate sending them to somewhere that's already had them sent, if you see what I mean. So we'd like to try and keep a list of who's taken what to where, and then obviously we'll send it to all the other places that aren't on that list that Debbie produces. So we're very grateful. Sorry, yes?
If it is that they want more,
yes.
who are they to contact?
Well, we've actually got a newly appointed trustee who's taken responsibility for being the central point of contact. So Nick Puntis will be the person who you write to. Probably best if we put something on the website, I suppose, that you can then look at to get Nick's address. That makes sense?
Well, my email will go on the website.
Yeah.
You email me with your name and address, and I'll send you however many copies you need.
Okay. Sorry.
Jane, can we ask Peter's consent to be filmed?
Oh yes. Sorry, apparently we've forgotten, but obviously this meeting, the presentations are filmed, and we'd like to be able to take a few photographs of the assembled, overall group, so to speak, so that we can use the photographs in, say, our newsletter and that type of thing. If anyone has any objection, can they please make Judith and David aware, and we'll make sure you're airbrushed out of any photographs.
Just hide under the table.
So, thank you. Right, so this is really an update on a GIST support project that started 3 years ago, November 2010. GIST Support UK very kindly agreed to offer assistance to an initiative which is really to focus on wild-type GIST patients, and as I think we were all informed earlier, the majority of paediatric patients are wild-type. There are very few, I think, that are anything other than wild-type. And this project called PAWS GIST was born. It stands for Paediatric, Adolescent, Wild-type and Syndromic GIST, and is really focusing on trying to improve treatment and ultimately find a cure for this rare form of cancer in young people. So, as an initiative, started in November 2010, and our overall aim is to try and make a situation where medical profession, patients, and obviously GIST Support UK's focuses on improvement of in treatments for GIST patients, combine specialist skills, improve knowledge, define better treatments. When you're diagnosed with this, it's almost impossible to believe that something doesn't already exist that's going to be able to cure it. So when you're faced with this, obviously it's a problem which, if you sit back, I don't think anything necessarily won't happen, but it won't necessarily happen at the speed that you need it to happen to help you. So when we met in November, I say some of this is repetition if you've seen me present before, because obviously our aims are always going to be the same until we actually achieve them, and then obviously we'll move on to something else. But there isn't currently a register of all the patients who have GIST, and there isn't a national register as such that's the definitive picture of how many GIST patients there are, and there isn't anything particularly in place for paediatric and wild-type GIST patients. To improve the possibility of actually finding treatments that may be beneficial to patients, in research, most products that are found to be treatments are tested in the first instance on live cells that are growing in a petri dish. The idea being that if you can prove in a petri dish that it will kill the cells off, then there may be some benefit in following that route to see if it would be beneficial to the patients. GIST cell lines for wild-type GIST don't exist anywhere in the world at the moment, so obviously that's one of our targeted aims, to try and facilitate a situation. I gather they're not easy to grow purely because they're slow growing generally, which obviously gives an extra degree of difficulty. We want, ideally, a bigger population of doctors to be aware of this condition in the first place, to have it on their agenda, so that when they see a patient perhaps presenting with anemia, it is, and a lump that's not quite clearly defined, it might be GIST, rather than not even having it in their mindset at the beginning. Obviously, when they've had their training, they haven't been told about GIST, they aren't going to have it there already, but potentially one initiative that we as a group might do might be to try and stimulate some education for doctors, GPs, a one-day course or some kind of online video presentation that they can click on a link to see. This is GIST, this is what it means, this is what you might need to look out for. All sorts of other things that are needed, and ideally what we're looking for is to just put ourselves more regularly on the agenda for consideration. I updated everyone with a variety of things. Each time we have a meeting, I give an update on what's kind of happened since the last meeting. So that's what this is. We had the last meeting in October. Because nothing exists currently, when we first started out, I asked Dr. Ramesh Balusu, who is the gentleman who offered to, well, one of the people that's offered to be of assistance to us, what exactly do we need to be able to get a clinic going that will bring the patients together and pull enough information together that then we can say, here's a sort of a data set that can be used for research. And obviously money is at the base of most things, and in order to have funds, facilities, etc., he said you probably need around about £40,000 to be able to think about starting a clinic. So over the last years we've been fundraising for, one of the fundraising efforts of GIST Support UK, this particular fund is for a clinic, and we've raised so far just under £50,000. That's been done by any means at our disposal, but mainly by well-wishers, family, friends, running marathons, having tea parties, fancy dress, this, that and the other, anything that will actually generate some awareness that people say they'd like to support this aim. So we have raised sufficient at the moment to think about, we're in a position to be able to start a clinic. So we do hope that we will be able to have a clinic this year. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about how potentially the clinic might work later on. In terms of other things we've been doing, we've represented GIST Support UK and our PAWS GIST project at the British Sarcoma Group meeting, which happened in February this year. That's an opportunity to network with doctors who specialise in sarcomas, and every time we go to one of these things, all of a sudden it seems to open up more opportunity for us to hopefully put GIST on the agenda. Sarcoma doctors are all aware of GIST, but obviously there are other sarcomas that they specialise in as well. And we found that by talking to doctors that we haven't met before, first of all, do you have any GIST patients on your register? Yes, we do. And it was surprising how many, when we asked them, and are any of those wild type? Yes, they are. So we were told that wild type would be ultra rare, and we have struggled to actually find significant numbers, I suppose. My daughter's a patient. I was introduced to a family in Reading who have a daughter who's a patient. There's another lady up in Scotland, etc. And through that process over the years, we've managed to get to, with the adult patients as well, just under or around about 30 patients. We went to this session for 2 days and came away with more than 50. And that's not every doctor that treats GIST patients in this country. So this statistic of 10 or 11% of GIST patients being wild type, we think the numbers are going to actually significantly grow when we find them. And finding them, obviously, in the first place is one of the difficulties. We have been, for some while now, trying to propose that GIST is a disease that needs to become part of, or have specialist commissioning status within the NHS. We've been talking about it with the people who are responsible for that for some while, and we aren't specially commissioned yet, but there have been quite a lot of changes going on in the NHS, which we've had to hold off. We've been in discussion, but we haven't been able to do anything because there have been so many changes going on. But recently, Barbara and I were invited to apply. Obviously, we haven't been accepted yet, but we have both applied to be patient advocates on the sarcoma clinical reference group. And we hope, I mean, there's an active approach to say that patients' voices need to be heard on these groups. That's recognised. Whether we'll be selected to be those patients with the voice, I don't know, but keep your fingers crossed. We hope we are. I think last time I spoke about we'd come across at the previous British Sarcoma Group meeting a team of researchers who were growing sarcoma cell lines, and we asked them if they would have a go at growing some GIST cell lines. And in a small way, they have had a go. Very pleased and grateful to them for that. And the latest news was that they had some cells that were growing, but they haven't yet been able to determine if they are GIST cells that are growing or whether they are just other tissue that's been harvested. So that's kind of a question which is still up in the air, and I don't have an answer to that one yet. I also said in our last meeting that we'd gained ethics committee approval for a national GIST tumour bank. The idea of having a national GIST tumour bank would mean, yet again, that anybody wishing to undertake research into GIST of any kind, if they've got a central place they can go to get the raw materials for their research, then that will hopefully speed the process up and be very helpful. As usual, I get a little bit frustrated because I want to move a lot faster than in reality I think things do. But in the last week, I've had a conversation with Professor Andy Hall, the one who gained the ethics approval for us, and he has basically agreed that with GIST Support UK, we are going to hopefully put together some literature to have like a campaign to raise awareness amongst patients about what you should do if you have a GIST tumour sample already existing in a hospital or you're about to have an operation, what you should be doing to make sure that that tissue is sent to the tumour bank. And similarly, really just to raise awareness in the medical profession that we have this tumour bank. So if you have a patient and they're about to have an operation, then this is potentially what you could be doing to help make sure that tissue goes to the right place. Right. One of the obviously medications that some of our patients are benefiting from is nilotinib, and obviously we need to be, I suppose, careful how we use the information that we have, but we believe we know there are patients who are benefiting from use of nilotinib, and it does seem galling that there are other patients who fail imatinib and suited, that they aren't naturally offered that as an alternative, especially where they're wild type. From our 36 doctors in Europe that we've approached about this drug and whether it's been beneficial to their patients, we've had 11 respond so far, and of those, I made a typo there, of the 17 patients that they're saying, not names, just numbers, there are 13 of them that have actually benefited from using that drug, so it's quite a high proportion of people. So we don't know how we're going to approach this yet, but having collected the data, we want to do something meaningful which isn't going to damage people's likelihood of getting this drug in the future, but make it so that they can have access to that drug. The next thing is this mythical National GIST Registry, which has been on the cards for quite some while and quite a lot of people discuss it. My understanding is that people such as Professor Ian Judson, Dr. Ramesh Balusu, and in fact, Karis, are you on this? You are, aren't you? I remembered your name as being one of them. There's a sort of collection of specialists around the country that basically are undertaking a sort of pilot of 10 hospitals, and at Cambridge, I believe, have the intellectual property rights for a national GIST registry, and that at the moment that's being rolled out to 10 hospitals. Asking these questions.
Yeah. Sorry, but I think it's basically being set up in a number of places. It's taken much longer, as you've alluded to, everything like this. It's taken a bit longer than hoped to get it through sort of a couple of
Yeah.
in each individual trust, if you like. So, but I think it is set up in most of the initial hospitals.
Yeah.
And what it involves is then taking consent from every patient,
Is basically taking consent from every patient individually to basically put their information anonymously onto the registry. The idea is that we'll build up a national picture of GIST in the UK and give us more information about the type of treatments, the incidence and epidemiology, and also, response to treatment. So hopefully people here who have heard of it or will be hearing of it will be approached about, consenting to have their data put onto it. So I think it's in progress, but it's, has been relatively slow progress initially. I think once now it's up and running, things will move much more quickly.
Yeah.
And I think again the idea is to roll it out to other centres.
Yeah, ideally in the long run, obviously, the aim will be to have a national GIST registry. So, yet again, if we have a situation where we have a national tumour bank, if we have a registry, then getting a body of information together that can be used to sort of support any drives on any particular initiatives is going to be much easier, and that's for both for the medical profession, politicians, and for patient groups. We had our second PAWS GIST clinic planning session at Paddington Station just a few weeks ago. It's now, Ramesh has now managed to get agreement from everyone at Adam Brooks Hospital that the clinic, when it starts, will be held there. The format of the clinic, I think, potentially is likely to be different from what was originally proposed, and that's purely been based on the findings of the American version of such a clinic, which is kind of what stimulated the idea in the first place. In America, when they started their paediatric and wild-type GIST clinic, it was run for 3 days. You'd send all of your scans and notes and whatever samples you had in advance of going there, and then on the first evening there was like a seminar, and then the next morning you were given half an hour, and it was just you and your carer, and all of the multidisciplinary team focused on that group of patients. You had half an hour to ask whatever questions you liked, and they would then also give you their view on best way forward in terms of treatment. When Eve and I went, the bombshell at the time was they advised us against surgery, which up until that point everyone had said surgery was the only way forward for Eve. And they suggested a whole regime of different things that could be done, like sealing off the bleeding of her tumours and those sorts of things. So we came back with sort of a way forward, a pathway to follow, which we felt reasonably confident about. Because they have been researching this, they're 5 years ahead of us, they've been researching this for that length of time, so they've got a body of information and data already. So, what they've decided now is rather than having 3-day clinics, is that they're probably going to have a 1-day clinic, and they don't think it's necessary to have all of the specialists, they don't necessarily need to have the surgeons, as long as they've had that before the patient meeting, then the people that deliver that information to the patients are fewer people. So based on that, I believe our format for our clinic will be that the doctors who are involved with PAWS GIST clinic will have a meeting in advance of the clinic. They will obviously, for the first one, agree what their roles are and how they interact, etc. But they'll also review patient data so that at the clinic, which will happen on, say, a Thursday evening and all day on the Friday, individual patients will meet with those doctors that are present, and there will be a discussion about their individual case and pathways forward, etc. I think the idea also, there will be no more than 12 patients per clinic, but rather than having the clinic twice a year, Ramesh is actually suggesting the clinic should happen 3 times a year. Logic being, we need to get the data for the maximum number of patients gathered together as quickly as possible, because that's the only way we're then going to have the body of data to start research. Other things we've been doing, we have made a very early approach to Astellas about linzitinib. Obviously it's in trial in America, but the company does exist in this country. And at this stage, obviously, all we've done is engage with them to see what questions we've got, but it's not currently licensed to be used here. And the other good news is that Dr. Peluso has been appointed as a clinician on the sarcoma clinical reference group, so hopefully that means he can have some influence on what happens as far as GIST patients are concerned. Fundraising and raising our profile. Now, obviously from a PAWS GIST perspective, we've had obviously a lot of people doing things. Recent ones have been Nick Thomas has cycled from Land's End to John O'Groats and raised £1,700 for us. And just this last weekend, Victoria Jayne ran the London Marathon, and we believe she's raised around about £1,800 for us. We've had a Sainsbury's raffle. The McCarthy's, who are sat there, I gather 9 of them are going to be cycling from London to Brighton later on in the year. So all of these things are things that we wouldn't exist, we wouldn't have the ability to even think about trying to do the things we're doing if we didn't have people who were doing those sorts of things to boost our funds. Our second newsletter is under construction. This time it won't be a PAWS GIST specific newsletter, it will be a GIST Support UK newsletter, because at the end of the day PAWS GIST is a project, we are GIST Support UK. And very recently we've also been invited to get involved in a discussion about an initiative that Lord Maurice Saatchi has underway, particularly for rare cancers. At this stage, obviously it's a discussion to understand how there might be some things that somebody with his influence and contacts might be able to assist, but obviously he's very focused on helping rare cancers, and I'm sure there are things that we need that potentially somebody like him can help us publicise. As far as GIST Support UK is concerned, and projects such as PAWS GIST, as an entity, as I say, we can't exist without funding, and obviously we've been very well supported through the years by organisations, some of the pharmaceutical companies who've been very generous. But obviously, we're in a recession and sources of income will change and evolve in different ways through time. We've got things that we want to do as a charity. As far as GIST Support UK is concerned, we support patients, we have meetings such as this. Those all have to be funded. We want to do even more. We want to reach out to those patients that aren't yet aware of GIST Support UK. They're sort of travelling this journey on their own, and we want to make sure that all their doctors, when they're first diagnosed, know that there is this support system in place for them where they can learn more and hopefully contribute to helping themselves in the future. We want to make everyone in this country aware there's a GIST tumour bank. And we want to be a catalyst for research for this disease. So the only way we're going to do that is to raise funds. And it doesn't have to be huge efforts, such as running from John O'Groats to Land's End. Potentially there's something that everybody could do without it actually causing a lot of distress or harm. So, we are preparing a pack of ideas, and when we've agreed what the pack is, we'll put it on the internet, and if any of you have any friends, relatives, sort of thinking I want to do something and I'd like to think of a charity I could do it for, then don't forget to think about GIST Support UK. It's only because GIST Support UK has been so helpful that the PAWS GIST project actually gets off the ground. I know some of you already do think a lot about this. One lady, sorry I can't remember your name, but has already arrived with all of these cards that she's handmade, and she's asked if we can sell them to raise funds for GIST Support UK. Another lady, when she picked up a t-shirt, thought it was a handbag earlier on, or a shopping bag, and now an idea's come about, shouldn't we perhaps have these, rather than a bag for life, well I suppose it might be a bag, but we have a GIST Support UK PAWS GIST bag for life. that people might make donations for it, but also publicise ourselves. So if you think there's anything you can do, whether it's just having a jam jar on the desk in your office and putting a label on it, and anyone that's got any loose change they want to stick it in, doesn't matter what it is, have a go. We'd be very grateful. So looking forward, we've emailed the new chair of the sarcoma clinical reference group and asked if it would be possible to go and meet him. So I haven't had a response yet, but I think he's probably very busy, so we'll just keep plugging away until hopefully he says yes. We've arranged a meeting, this is specifically for PAWS GIST, with the head of the Children's Cancer and Leukemia group, because we want to make sure that there are so many different specialist functions within the NHS. We don't want anyone to think that we exist and we haven't actually engaged with them, because in actual fact they're all part of the same entity, and there will be other children that are diagnosed with GIST, and if these individuals are aware of what we're doing and what can exist, then those patients will automatically hopefully get referred. We're finalising a clinic website. This is something specifically for the clinic. I was hoping, we haven't got any internet connection here, otherwise I'd show you a picture of the first draft, but wasn't able to do that. Obviously publicising the tumour bank. I understand from Ramesh that there is a sarcoma clinical reference group meeting in June, which is actually going to be critical to any further developments in the GIST field, and obviously particularly PAWS GIST. So hopefully once that's out of the way, we'll have a clearer picture of exactly when the clinic can be, but we're aiming at the autumn now. It was originally going to be spring, but I think it's going to be autumn. So that's me. Obviously, thank you very much for your support. The project's ongoing. We are making some progress. We're very close to having this first clinic start. There's just a few other small hurdles in the way that we need to overcome. Thank you very much.